So the first answer really is that we are still a very long way away from bringing together the whole world of TV and video measurement and providing a really good holistic sense of the total video marketplace. So if you think about it, the great joy of the current moment is that we've made it far easier to stand up a streaming service on a platform. Not all of the data that comes to measurement vendors from those platforms is complete. It needs editing, it needs work.
Welcome to the Marketing Report, a podcast created for and by marketing professionals who seek to better understand their consumers and design unique, personalized experiences that stand out in today's market. In each episode, hosts from Verisk Marketing Solutions connect you to industry thought leaders, practitioners, and experts focused on improving B2C experiences through powerful data-driven insights. It's about how we connect with our consumers and where we can partner together to do it better. This is the Marketing Report.
Welcome to the Marketing Report. It's a podcast, everybody. I am Tim Finnegan, and I lead product marketing for Verisk Marketing Solutions, where we focus on consumer data and insights. And one of the lucky things that I get to do, not only my regular day job, but I host this podcast where I get to talk to leading experts on all things marketing. But more specifically, we really touch on themes about using data to run better marketing campaigns, using consumer insights and identity resolution to make those campaigns better, as well as insights from our guests on how to be better marketers, leaders, employees. We really dive into their point of view. But today we're lucky enough to have John Watts, who leads CIMM, which, John, I'm going to try it from memory, the Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement.
Thank you.
So now we're putting a bow on all that stuff about data, identity resolutions, consumer insights. Now it's going to be, how do we measure all that and what should we be measuring? So I have John Watts, who's the managing director of CIMM, Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement. He has over 25 years experience in media and advertising. You've worked as an advisor and a consultant to major media and technology enterprises. Welcome to the Marketing Report, John.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So let's start off. Can you tell everyone what CIMM does?
Absolutely. So, well, first of all, it's great to be here. I think this industry is at such a fascinating moment in its evolution, and measurement and currency and all of the related topics have never been more important. So CIMM has actually been around since the late 2000s. It was originally founded by a group of TV researchers from the major studios who brought together their companies to form a coalition focused very much on promoting innovations in cross-platform TV measurement. So they were particularly interested in the use of big TV data sets to complement and support panels, and their role and remit expanded during the course of the 2010s to look at things like attribution, standards to advertising metadata and content metadata, a whole variety of things. The organization was led by my illustrious predecessor, Jane Clark, one of the great and good of the industry, and a real friend. I think Jane had a huge fan base out there in the media and advertising world. When I took over in 2022, which feels like a long time ago already, but time has flown by, I have to say, it was clear that CIMM needed a reset. Now, that wasn't because anything that had gone before was necessarily wrong. It was mainly because, as it won't have escaped anyone's notice, the world of TV and video had changed out of all recognition. There was a well-established transition towards a multi-currency environment with amazing companies like VideoAmp and iSpot, complementing people like Nielsen and Comscore who already been in the market. Streaming has obviously been growing at pace, accelerating during the pandemic. There was a data enablement shift happening, which has profound implications. So in 2022, we ran a 6-month strategy review, and out of that emerged what I sometimes tongue-in-cheek refer to as CIMM 2.0. So our mission, our new mission, is very straightforward. We're here to support improvements, best practices, and innovations in 3 key areas, as I see it. Number 1, measurement and currency development. So the way that we measure, plan, and buy TV and video. Secondly, data collaboration and enablement. So the use of data to support addressable segment formation, the issues around identity resolution, issues around privacy, data quality, these sorts of things. And then thirdly, and one of the most exciting areas to me, is the use and application of new metrics. So new ways of really understanding the value of media. So CIMM delivers against this mission in a very unique way. We're a non-profit, non-partisan subsidiary of the Advertising Research Foundation. So we have around 100 members. We've had a huge spike in membership during the course of the last 12 months, as we've really tried to embrace the brand new and ever expanding world of TV and video. So our members include all of the major networks and programming groups, the MVPDs and CTV OEMs, the programmatic platforms, the measurement and data vendors, the big agency groups, and then a long tail of specialists around the ecosystem. And it's growing all the time. We're just about to announce another new raft of members who joined in the last few months. We're also expanding into Europe. So historically, the body has been US focused, but we're finding more and more requests to make common cause. There's a sense that what's happening here in the States is going to increasingly start to happen in Europe, and learnings from Europe that can be very relevant over here. Plus, of course, the big US companies long expanded into Europe. They all have assets, they're distributing channels, they're rolling out streaming services. So we're very international. And the program that we run, which is funded by the members, really encompasses three key areas. Number one, we have a set of working groups. We reset them each year. They focus on particular topics and areas of real interest. So good examples, we're doing work at the moment on programmatic, on measurement, and on ad measurement and currency. We're looking at content measurement, which is often overlooked. We've got a group looking at local television, which is very important to us, a variety of different activities. Secondly, we have a commissioning budget. So we work with our members to identify priorities, and then we commission studies, research projects, drill downs, deep dives, vendor comparisons, bigger initiatives designed to help our members address those issues. And then lastly, we have a very extensive program of events, forums, and so on, designed to really support collaboration and cooperation across the industry. So that's the kind of portfolio of activities. My sense very strongly is that cooperation has never been more important. My friend Justin Sampson, who runs Barb in the UK, is very fond of saying that measurement is truly a team sport. And I think at CIMM, we try to embody that. I think we can make progress best when there's a rising tide that can lift all of the ships.
That's great. So, John, when you say you're expanding into Europe and you're saying people want it, is it your family wants it? They want you back in Europe to
My family were keen to see me head this direction. Yeah, no,
So,
quite nuts. They're nervous they'll see a bit more of me. No, in all joking, no, it was really a combination of American companies, our members here in the US, expanding across Europe and saying, hey, we need to be looking at currency and measurement and cross-platform and all of these things in European markets. And then European organizations doing the same thing back. Clean rooms are not a US-only phenomenon. They're happening in every geography. There's pressures in every space around privacy, the use of data. Addressable is growing. Streaming is a universal phenomenon, albeit at different rates and paces in different markets.
so you had mentioned one of your partners that you work with is ComScore, and I had the pleasure to interview Kelly Baird, who runs product over at ComScore, and one of the things that she had talked about was just that and because I asked her, what are industry leaders paying attention to these days, and she's like, well, there's just so much data that we need to get more like almost more sophisticated with it, and she's like, we've got our eye on like, what can we measure next, like with gaming and VR. And I think at CIMM, you probably are thinking that all the time, like what's next? What do we have to keep our eye and measure? Must be an exciting time to be in this space.
It's a really interesting question, and I have two answers to it. So the first answer really is that we are still a very long way away from bringing together the whole world of TV and video measurement and providing a really good holistic sense of the total video marketplace. So if you think about it, the great joy of the current moment is that we've made it far easier to stand up a streaming service on a platform and to bring great content to consumers. And I think that explosion of content, the range of program assets and titles that most viewers now have access to has exploded out of all recognition. And that's great news. It creates more choice for viewers. It creates more opportunities for advertisers. It creates more opportunities for creatives to bring their stories to audiences. But the challenge, of course, is that it makes measurement much more challenging. We're measuring far more things. So I think at CIMM and across the industry, there is now a consensus that the future of measurement is very much about knitting together panels, which provide great insights into who's watching. They provide holistic measurement, but they're never going to be big enough. In a fragmented marketplace, if you've got thousands of video services you're trying to measure, having a panel that's big enough, especially in a country as big and complex as the US, is always going to be difficult. So we know that we have to combine panels with TV data sets. And we now have data from set-top boxes, from smart TVs, from ad servers, from streaming solutions, a whole variety of different data sets. The challenge, of course, is that none of this data is perfect. There is no complete census level data covering the whole of the US marketplace. Data has holes in it. So some of the fingerprints that are picked up in an ACR solution on a traditional or classic smart TV platform, not all of them are recognized. Not all of the data that comes to measurement vendors from those platforms is complete. It needs editing, it needs work. So we're still some way away from being able to give marketeers clarity about how a campaign planned across national TV, addressable, streaming, joins up. So incrementality is complex. So advertisers obviously want to know that they're hitting audiences with the right reach and the right audiences. But doing that for national linear plus streaming plus local and then layering on addressable is still a complex thing to do. So the first answer to your question is, let's just fix the basics first. I mean, we're a long way. We've moved a very long way from the old world of purely broadcast only channels being measured by only panels, but we're still building out the future. We've made huge progress, I think, in the last 5 years, and the rate of change and development and innovation, I think, is phenomenal, but we're still not quite there yet. We still have work to do. So my first answer to your question is, well, we need to still understand the new world of television that US viewers are consuming every day, and we have some way to go before we can do that. My second answer is, I think we're going to see, in terms of new exciting things to measure, a much greater convergence of different types of video. I still think AR and VR is a little way off as a mass market phenomenon, but certainly gaming is already something that has become very prevalent and is gaining traction. I think a lot of what's happening on televisions in many households is literally hours of gaming activity, and our traditional TV measurement solutions don't always pick that up. I think the other thing I'm very interested in is out of home. So I mean video consumption out of home. So you only have to sit on a subway in the US to see that, in New York City, to see that people are watching a lot of video. They're catching up on their favorite program. They're picking up a sports broadcast, whatever. And we're still not always catching all of that. So there's still work to do to fill in those gaps. But if you had to ask me to pick one thing, I'd pick gaming. I think gaming is a huge phenomenon.
So, John, you said something that caught my ear when you said we have to fix the foundation, and all data is not perfect. I know that you recently had an event, CIMM Event East, where Scott McKinley from TrueSet, where he's trying to get more to that foundational data, where he talked about identity resolution. Can you just speak to a little bit about what he said and your thoughts about how identity resolution can help with that data?
100%. So, I mean, first of all, I should just say a few words about Scott. I had the great pleasure of meeting Scott a little while back, not long after I first started at CIMM. And I have to say, the work that they're doing at TrueSet is phenomenal. And we've been hugely excited to be able to partner with them on various projects. Scott and his team are real thought leaders in the industry. Whenever Scott stands up to speak, I, for one, sit in the audience taking notes. Whatever he says is always going to be interesting. We did a big study with TrueSet last year where we were looking at household to email match rates. So TrueSet have a data collective of a large group of companies who all play in the data and identity space. And the exercise the Scottish team went through was to explore the relative accuracy of matches of email addresses against postal addresses. And what they found is very wide variety across the companies in their collective. So on average, across that base, only about 53% of email addresses they estimate are being correctly matched with a postal address. The average household they found has around 14 email addresses associated with it. Now that's an average. So obviously that implies there's many households with far more than that, and some households with far fewer. So if you think about young people, for example, if you're a 20 something, you're much more likely than, say, a 55-year-old to change job, change address. You may not own your own property. You may be moving around as you look for the right employment opportunity. So those matches are much less stable than, say, a retired high-income household who are living in a permanent address. What we don't really have in the industry at the moment, though, are transparent labels that provide buyers with clarity about what they're transacting against. So the ecosystem is developing very rapidly, and I think we should be hugely positive, but we do have work to do to think about how we provide confidence in the qualitative data we're buying against. Now, it's not a problem that is apocalyptic. If we're all very used in a broadcast world to being served ads, which in many cases are just not relevant. I'm a rare Londoner who has never had a driving lesson, let alone a driving test, which I know lots of my American friends think is profoundly peculiar. And I'm just not in the market for a car. So I see a lot of irrelevant ads, I have to say. So if we're transacting on data which is poor quality, it doesn't always necessarily turn out to be a huge disaster, as long as you get some of your intended audience. I think the challenge is that there's not always transparency. I think many of us have seen the film The Big Short, and there's the famous scene, obviously, with the Jenga tower, which he's using to illustrate AAA bonds at the top versus junk bonds at the bottom. There's talk about whether you could introduce a similar system in relation to identity data, or provide some clarity about accuracy and match rate before you start transacting against the data set. I think the progress we can make in those areas, just to make everything work better. The process of standing up a clean room, if you're trying to match two different identity data sets, is still onerous. It takes a lot of time and expert resource. It's getting easier through practice, but we don't really have standards or easy ways of supporting data collaboration. And of course, once you've matched data sets in a clean room, that's not the end of the process. You then have to do something with the matches. So there's lots of questions about governance, transparency, interoperability, and how we collaborate to improve the operation of this really important part of the marketplace. We are literally building the future of many, many critical use cases on identity. Let's make sure we get it right. There's a great opportunity if we do.
And you had mentioned data clean rooms, and I'm living data clean rooms with Snowflake and AWS, and things are changing there too. And we've got some exciting news that, we're going to have someone from Snowflake on here to talk about how we work with their native app. I love some of those thoughts about identity resolution, and you're right with these data clean rooms and things we need to do. It's like, hey, we need to protect that PII, and how do we go about and do that? So what else is happening with the CIMM events? Like I saw, a bunch of stuff that you guys have been posting and LinkedIn lately. Tell me what the event is, who it's for, and how we can look for like how to go there, forward with it.
So CIMM, with our newly expanded program, we now run most years 5 events. So we run CIMM East, CIMM West, which are one-day events in New York and LA. We run CIMM Summit, which is very much our flagship event. That will be happening in October over 2 days at WBD's fantastic offices in Hudson Yards. That's our showcase where we bring together hundreds of people from across the industry to talk about the latest developments in the areas that we focus on. And then we'll also be doing stimulating some really productive conversations, we hope, in Cannes this year at the Cannes Lions Festival, and also in London. We're running our first ever London Summit, which is set for December, just before the Future TV Ad Forum event, which we're great fans of. We use those events really to to support and facilitate a public discussion about what's happening. At the same time, during the course of any given year, we're running a lot of work in the background. So our members have an extensive program of regular meetings through working groups, our regular member meetings, deep dive seminars, all of them very geared towards stimulating productive dialogue and collaboration around some of the most pressing challenges the industry is grappling with. So what we like to do at the events is showcase recently completed work or new studies that we've just commissioned. So two good examples. CIMM is about to publish a really, really exciting study that I'm very proud of, which we've commissioned from two great consultants, Joan Fitzgerald and Jonathan Stoyer, looking at the future role and value of panels in the US market. It's a surprisingly controversial topic. I was at IAB ALM at the start of the year, and they had a measurement panel, and two of the measurement vendors clashed on the panel. Karthik Rhodes from Nielsen said, the pendulum has swung back. Panels are now widely acknowledged to be a critical part of the future of measurement. And Peter Liguori from VideoAmp followed and said, panels are absolutely deader than dead. Now, we thought that was a reason to do a piece of work that tries to just definitively and authoritatively set out the state of play with panels and whether there are substitutes. Are there things we can do that don't require panels, which may be good enough in some instances? So we presented that, the findings from that study at CIMM East. We're going to be publishing a report next week. We also previewed some of the new research that we're doing. So we've been delighted to commission two real measurement experts with decades of experience between them, slightly more decades than I suspect they're happy to reference. Josh Chasen, who was at VideoAmp and other businesses for many years, and Albert Lau, who was previously at Omnicom. Two of them are real gurus, and they're going to be writing a paper for us looking at some of the biggest methodological challenges that all measurement vendors have to grapple with and what we can do about them. So a good example, they're going to dive deep into universe projections. So obviously measurement solutions are a partial estimate of what's happening in a certain part of the universe, and you then have to project the total market. And that means defining what that marketplace looks like. And surprisingly, there isn't an industry standard for it at this point. The Advertising Research Foundation has an offering called Dash, which is trying to become that standard and is an amazing product that's getting more and more adopted, more and more widely adopted, but it's relatively new. So these are the kinds of things we like to do at the events, is to preview new research or present findings from key studies. Again, just trying to help bring everyone together around a common understanding of where we're at, where we're going, and how we build on the progress of the last few years and keep going to make things better.
One of those studies that caught my eye that you guys just put out was the article about how you're working with OpenAP on identity resolution ecosystem for advanced TV advertising. Can you just touch on what you're doing with OpenAP?
Sure. So we've long been fans of the team at OpenAP. I think David Levy, who heads up the organization, is a truly inspirational leader. I think he's doing great work with the collection of publishers a part of that organization. And obviously last year, I think as many of you know, they picked up responsibility for housing the JIC, the newly formed committee of buyers and sellers that are trying to improve the marketplace. The first priority that that group has had has been focused on streaming data. So they're looking to build a standardized point of access for streaming data from the different major networks. And that's a really positive project. They've also recently confirmed and announced their certification of vendors who will be in receipt of that data to support their measurement solutions. And Comscore and VideoAmp were two of the companies that were referenced. That's not the end of their work, though. And we've been talking to them for some time to try and determine what's the next set of priorities and issues. So a little while back, we were brainstorming, and one area that I think many people think is going to be a critical issue this year is identity. So we have commissioned a brand new study. It's a joint study with an OpenAP, working with CIMM's membership base. And the goal of the study is very straightforward. We want to map out the identity ecosystem in the US marketplace. We want to look at how that ecosystem feeds different use cases, from addressability to targeting, to measurement, to attribution, planning, and so on. We then want to look at what is in place and working well, And then we want to look at what is not yet in place. We want to look at where there's work still to be done to make this ecosystem as efficient, as effective, as transparent, and as high quality as we can. We know that identity is going to be critical across the whole of the media and advertising workflow. It's going to define how we understand audiences. It's going to help us understand which screens we're delivering ads to and how effective those ads are. But the problems around collaboration, around interoperability. So the goal of the study is to try and create a kind of set of strategic recommendations for strengthening the operation of the IDR ecosystem at a time when it's becoming more and more central to the industry.
That's some really great stuff, John. And I just looked down on the clock. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been talking to John for almost a half hour. You're full of information. Hey, where can people find out more information about CIMM and more information about you or connect with you guys if they want to be a member, just interested in some of the studies you're doing with identity resolution, and where can they find you?
So we are right in the process of relaunching the CIMM website. There is an old and horrifically out-of-date website find at cimm-us.org. And that has a little bit of background to the organization. It has some of our recent announcements, and you can access some of our studies. You can find us on LinkedIn. So whenever we publish papers, you'll find them on LinkedIn by and large. Some of our work goes to our members only, but we're open to anyone. If you want to join and become part of CIMM, do reach out. There's a standard email address, info@cimm-us.org. And if you mail at that and express an interest in membership, we'll be happy to pick up, respond, and bring you into the coalition. It's a really, really positive attempt to move the market in the right direction. And we're incredibly excited to work with such an amazing set of companies and members and some very, very senior, exciting, experienced execs.
And and this is just a little commercial for CIMM as well, is that I've just become more educated just reading the articles and just going over your website. It's like, okay, what do they mean by this? And you guys cover it as far as measurement and media. So congratulations, and you're making me smarter. So you win.
To that end, I should say there's CIMM and the Advertising Research Foundation actually collaborated on a glossary. So there's a glossary of terms in measurement and advertising metrics, which you'll find on our website, which I do recommend. I had to read it when I first arrived in the US. Wow, what on earth is all this stuff? But it's a good read. I think we're looking at doing another update, but if you want to get educated, it's all in the glossary.
John, thanks again for being on the Marketing Report podcast. You've been a joy to have on.
Pleasure, Tim. Anytime. Hope to do it again soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Report. This show is brought to you by Verisk Marketing Solutions, an organization created to help CMOs and their partners improve the reach, timing, relevance, and compliance of every consumer engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Report wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the show notes for more information.